extreme flower that is realistic and not one that you will typically see on nails. It's not roses, it's not daisies, it's something new and interesting. I'm doing Birds of Paradise. I love Birds of Paradise. I actually think this one is easier than it looks. Something that I know I say a lot and some people disagree with me, but if you just kind of follow along with the steps and do things as you go, it really isn't too bad. I also want to mention, if you like these extreme 3D flowers, I do have some in the past. I have one where the whole nail is covered in extreme flowers, and then I have one that's one of my absolute favorites that's a pansy, which is my favorite kind of flower. So I'll put links to those in the description box below. I hope you like this video, and I will see you all next time. Bye!
So we are going to begin with an overlay that is an ombre from a very dark green to black at the tip, which will really offset the bright, beautiful colors of the Birds of Paradise. So I'm going to begin with the black, going from about a third of the way down the nail and then all the way to the tip, and then repeat the steps with green, going from the cuticle to about that third of the way from the other side, so that you have a nice smooth transition from the green to the black. After that's done, encapsulate the nail with a layer of clear acrylic. I always like to encapsulate my gradients because I feel they just stay smoother, they look better, and they look more completed at the end. Plus, if you do a clear encapsulation over the top of your background color, it creates a very subtle but important lift from the background to the foreground if you're doing 3D art, and makes the 3D art look like it's standing off of the nail even more than it would otherwise. After that has been done, then you can just go through and file the nail into shape with your e-file to smooth it out and get it all ready for your 3D artwork. Most of this art is going to be created on a nail form backing and then applied to the nail. So I'm going to start out with a multicolored bead of a neon yellow and a neon orange. When you are grabbing this bead combination of the yellow and the orange, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to dip into the yellow first and then into the orange. If you dip into the orange first, then into the yellow, all the pigment from the orange will rush into the yellow acrylic and you'll get a single color and won't have that very slight little color ombre. And I also would recommend that you don't necessarily make all of the petals the exact same color ratio. Some of them should be more yellow, some of them should be more orange. You're going to be making 5 of these. After you have them pulled in that petal shape, you're going to let them set for a moment and then fold them in half so that they look like they have a ridge down the middle and they have those 2 sides coming up. I like to work in sort of a system where I do some steps on each one and kind of go back and forth, so that I end up making all of them much quicker than I would if I were just to be working on a single petal at a time. So I've kind of a step 1, step 2, then go back to the first one, then go back to the second one. For the other type of petal we're going to be making for the inside of these flowers, you're going to take a blue and pink bead. Same thing, you're going to want to dip into the pink first and then into the blue so that the whole thing doesn't just turn blue. And then you're going to make these ones a little bit maybe skinnier or a little longer. They're just a little bit smaller and more leggy looking than the yellow ones. But the same process, pull it into the petal shape, let it set for a moment, and then fold it in half. After those have all been done, make sure you loosen them from the nail form backing and then start to just sort of set them up. Start first by laying out the yellow and orange petals. They don't all need to be facing the same direction. Alternate them so that some of them are facing to the right and some of them are facing to the left, going by where the opening is and where the spine of the back of the petal is. Lay them out so that they are in a nice crown shape, going out, flaring, with the longest one in the middle and the shortest ones on the outside. Then grab your 2 blue and pink and just sort of place them in. Don't glue anything together until you are happy with the position of where all of the petals are. And if you're doing multiple Birds of Paradise like I am, you're going to want to have them be at different amounts of open. So some of them are a little tighter, some of them are more fanned out or spread out. After you are happy with the position, grab some clear acrylic and start working it in between the petals at the base where they touch so that they are completely attached. You do not want to glue them or add anything too far up on the petals so that it'll show. You really just want to focus that on the bottom. After that has been set where they really are attached nicely, create a little clear acrylic blob on the end of the petals. Then with green, we're going to be sculpting the really big leaf base that holds onto the petals. So with a nice bright shade of green, just sculpt out a thicker, bigger leaf shape or petal shape, very similar to what you were doing for the skinny petals that are in the bright colors. After that's set up a moment, wrap that around the bulbous end on your petals. Use your fingers, if you're wearing gloves, to really pinch the end into a nice skinny point and press it against all of those petals. And then you have the start of your Bird of Paradise. After you have that done, then you're going to want to just create a little bit of an extender on the end of that with red acrylic instead of with green. So I'm going to switch to my other color and I'm going to be sculpting a rectangle with that red acrylic. It doesn't have to be a certain thickness or even really a certain size, just as long as it's big enough to wrap around the end of the green. After it's set up just long enough where you can peel it off of your nail form backing, slide your brush underneath, wrap it around the end of that, and again, use your fingers as long as you're wearing a pair of gloves just to kind of complete it and pinch it. And then smooth out the transition from the red to the green by blending a little bit of the red over the green that is on that leaf base. After you have that done, then you just want to make sure that the rest of that red area is thick enough that it will support the weight of the flower. I'm going to be adding the next layer of the stem. So I'm going to be taking more of my green acrylic and sculpting a house shape. So it's got a peaked roof and then the tall sides coming down. Doesn't have to be perfect. All of these shapes can have a little bit of individuality. They can be a little imperfect, a little imperfect, not imperfect, a little imperfect. See, my words are even imperfect. They can be a little taller on one side, a little thicker in an area, but then you're going to wrap that around so that the peaked roof sticks up past the red and that the rest wraps around and creates a little elbow shape so that the flower bends out to the side. I'm now going to glue all of my flowers onto the nail. So I'm going to take that first one that we were just working on and glue that towards the upper portion of the nail, angling it so it sort of goes off to the side. You don't want your birds of paradise to be like really just all in a line. You want them to flare out just a little bit. So after you have the first one, if you are just doing one, then you would extend the length of the stem going down the nail. If you are making a little bouquet as I am, then you're going to grab your next flower, and that one you're going to want to sculpt in the opposite fashion so it's a mirror image and facing the other way. And then glue that one in place, secure it with a little bit of clear acrylic, grab your third one, for me that's also my final one, and place it right in the middle. So depending on how many flowers you're making, it'll depend on exactly their position, how far out they're angled, how many you put in each, going each way. You get the gist. You're going to want to arrange them. After you have all of them secured to the nail with just a touch of clear acrylic, you're going to go back to your bright shade of green and you're going to extend their stems going all the way down. If you wanted to, you could extend each stem as you go so you wouldn't have to work around them, but that does create some extra thickness that you may not want to try to deal with because you won't be able to glue the flowers flush to the nail. You'll have to glue them up and over the previous stems. So for me, it was actually easier to sculpt the extra stem length around the ones that are in the front, but it's kind of a personal preference. If you wanted to do them whichever way works for you, obviously go for that. I'm going to be adding that final little bit towards the tip. The black acrylic in the background really does offset against that bright green. If you find that your shade of bright green does not have enough pigment in it, that it shows up opaquely on top of a dark color in the background like that, you may need to do a little layer of white acrylic first and then the brighter shade of green on top of it. Hopefully that's not necessary. Hopefully your colors are just opaque enough on their own, but you never know. Sometimes those really bright neon colors need a little boost of white underneath them. After you have this final little stem finished, all of the acrylic sculpting is done on these birds of paradise, and all you have left to do is to add some details as you see fit with acrylic paint. They really wouldn't need much. I'm going to add a little shading onto their stems, just a touch with a darker shade of green and a fluffy brush that is really good at just sort of blending out the color. That's something that is completely optional. It does make it so that it's a little more set off from the ones in the back versus the one in the front. A little highlight with some yellow paint, same kind of process, not necessary, but it does look nice if you add those last final little details. You can add the same kind of little highlights or lowlights here and there on the flower petals or anywhere else. If you didn't blend the red on the bottom of the leaf, that front leaf that's holding the petals, I would recommend doing that with acrylic paint if you didn't do it with your acrylic, just because a lot of times birds of paradise have some of that richer color that kind of extends down what I think of as their throat. And then after you have that, I'm going to take a little bit of black, add even more shading to the underside of these, a little more shading here and there around the tops of the flowers as well. Just the more you add, the more detail and definition there is, really the better it looks. But especially in the case with a flower like this, it didn't require it. It is up to your discretion, however much you want to add, however far you want to go with it, and however much time you want to allow yourself for this type of a design. If you want to keep it really simple and light, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to use some diluted burgundy to add a little shading around the base of the petals. Again, not necessary, adds a little bit, go for it if you'd like. Apply some gel sealer over the background, make that background really nice and shiny. The shininess will intensify the color of the black acrylic in the background, making your neon flowers stand out even more. It's all about the contrast. And then apply some 3D glaze over the top of the flowers. This is essentially it is a regular lacquer top coat, it won't look nearly as shiny as the gel sealer in the background, but it will give them a satiny finish, making their colors a little bit more vivid as well. And that's it. I love this design. I love making these extreme flowers. I'm not really a classic flower person. You don't see me sculpting roses too often, but something like this, way more up my alley. I love it. I hope you guys like it too, and I will see you all next time. Bye!